I rewrote my will to save my family, and my son answered by handing me an invoice for being his father. By December he and his sister were in court trying to have me declared incompetent, and I was paying lawyers to protect the company that bought their school shoes. I kept every dollar, but it cost me the one thing I thought money could not touch, my children. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. My name is Edward Cole. I turned 70 last winter and found that grief ages a man faster than the calendar. My wife, Lorraine, passed 2 years ago in late November, and even now her slippers sit under the bench by the door, as if she might still step into them and scold me for tracking sawdust into the kitchen. 47 years we had. I buried that many years beside the birches she loved and told myself the rest of my days would be spent protecting the family we built. I own Cole Fixtures, a regional company we started in a rented garage with a battered table saw and 2 contracts I did not deserve. We make cabinetry, store fixtures, and the kind of honest, sturdy things that creak with time in a way that feels like companionship. The company grew in the predictable ways. 1 job became 3, 3 became 10, we hired a second crew, then a third. I learned to negotiate with men who could smell panic like timber smoke. We survived 2 recessions, half a dozen bad ideas, and a fire that took the back office but spared the shop floor. By the time Lorraine fell ill, we had a proper headquarters, 300 employees, and our names stamped on more waiting rooms, bakeries, and clinics than I can count. We had 2 children. Our son, Mark, is 44 and talks like he is always on the clock. He was a good baseball catcher and a passable clarinet. If you ask him what he does, he will tell you he optimizes outcomes, by which he means he buys little companies like ours, breaks them into pieces, and sells those pieces to people who think they are getting a deal. He moved away after business school and came back when he smelled in me that softening that comes before succession. Our daughter, June, is 39. She is brilliant and impatient and refuses to talk to her food as it cooks, which Lorraine always said was a tragedy. June runs the numbers for a hospital system and once did an entire Thanksgiving on spreadsheets. She is the sort who finishes your sentence not because she is rude, but because she has guessed your next 3 thoughts and is already bored. Lorraine was the person who turned all our jagged edges into a home. When she died, we stood around the hole and pretended we were not falling into it with her. Mark put his hand on my shoulder like I was a client. June cried until there were no more tears left to fetch. The grandchildren hid their faces in their sleeves. We said all the things people say to make the unspeakable into a script: good life, no more pain. She would not want us to be sad, we must be strong. After everyone left, I sat on the porch and drank the cold air until it burned. Here is what no one tells you: grief makes money ugly. It stretches a skin over it so thin you can see every vein, every memory pulsing through. After the funeral and the casseroles and the sorry you lost her cards, talk turned to what came next, by which my children meant the business and the house and the lake property and the investments and my life insurance and the tax strategies and who would sit at the head of what table. I wanted one thing. I wanted Sunday dinners with my children and my grandchildren. I wanted to sit at the head of the table, yes, but only to pass the rolls and keep the peace. I wanted what Lorraine called fabric, threads knotted so tightly you cannot pick them apart without tearing the whole cloth. Mark wanted something else entirely. He wanted to unlock value. June wanted governance and transparency. The words were cold to the touch. They sounded like steel doors closing. They sounded like the end of laughter under the maple tree in July. I did not trust my grief to make good decisions. So I saw our attorney, Mr. Shepherd, a patient man with a face like a worn boot. We sat in his office where a wall of framed diplomas tried too hard to reassure, and we worked out a plan that would buy me time. We created a living trust that kept all voting shares of coal fixtures under my control for the remainder of my life, with a non-family board majority to prevent anyone, including me, from doing anything foolish in a haze of sadness. We wrote language that protected the pension fund and the jobs and the community commitments. We made provisions for the grandchildren's education, stipends for charity, and a little money each year to cover family vacations if the family ever healed enough to vacation. We set aside inheritances for the children, but not the company itself. The business would go into a perpetual employee trust after I died, managed by the board with strict rules about reinvestment and wages. It was Lorraine's idea years ago when we visited one of those bakeries that never closed despite 3 generations of owners. "Things last when people matter more than margins," she said over a cinnamon bun that left sugar on her smile. She always said wise things like she was noting the weather. I should have told the children slowly, carefully, with a hand on the wheel. Instead, I told them all at once at the first Sunday dinner we attempted after the funeral. I cooked too much food and under-seasoned the gravy. The table was one place setting short and I stared at that ghost seat until June reached over and moved a napkin into it like she was covering a wound. "I want to keep us together," I said. "This is how." Mark put down his fork. "You fenced us out of our own legacy," he said. "Your legacy is not a check," I said. "It is a name." "I worked for that name," he said, and his voice had the peculiar quality of someone reciting a speech he had rehearsed. He had visited the house midweek, I realized, and stood in the empty kitchen telling the microwave exactly how he felt. June did not raise her voice. She never does. She used a quieter weapon. "You made this decision alone," she said. "While we were still bleeding." I told them the truth. "I could not absorb your grief and mine and still lead the company in a way that honored your mother. I did not do this to punish you. I did this to protect everything I love." "The board language is a fortress," Mark said. "No family control. A perpetual trust. Do you know what that looks like on paper?" "Stable," I said. "Hostile," he said. We did not throw plates. We did not storm from the table. We did not call each other names. It might have been cleaner if we did. Instead, there was a terrible quiet. The grandchildren watched us from the far end, where the mashed potatoes had become a game of mountains and lakes. I thought if Lorraine had been there she would have told a story about the time we could not afford a Christmas tree and made one out of a ladder and green crepe paper. She would have found a way to turn the conversation into laughter, to braid the tension into something rope-strong. I am not Lorraine. The next week, a courier delivered a folder so heavy it seemed to bend gravity. Mark had hired counsel. The letter was respectful. It alleged undue influence by the board, questioned my competency in the wake of spousal death, and outlined a proposed restructuring to align family incentives with stakeholder value. I sat at the kitchen table with the document and read the words until the words turned into insects. June's email came that night. She said she did not support litigation, but she could not support my plan either. "We need an instrument that anticipates future leadership," she wrote. "We need to imagine a world after you, Dad." I wanted to be angry. I wanted to gather up the papers and burn them in the fireplace and invite my children over to toast marshmallows over the flames. Instead, I made tea. I called Mr. Shepherd. We met with the board. We confirmed that the trust was solid. We added a clause to allow quarterly family meetings, non-binding but meaningful. We expanded the educational funds for the grandchildren. We wrote a letter, my letter, to accompany every future copy of the trust, outlining why I had done what I had done in words that did not sound like a bank. I told stories about the first jobs and the men who broke their backs for us so our family could thrive, and why I did not trust a marketplace that only rewarded those who could squeeze. Even with all that, the family meetings were wooden performances. Mark came with his jaw set. June came with spreadsheets. The grandchildren were shuffled by babysitters between piano and soccer and karate and came for the last 10 minutes, all breathless apologies and sticky fingers. We tried to talk. We walked over the same ground. It was winter all the while. Spring felt like a rumor. When the thaw came, I invited everyone to the lake property. The house there is small and plain. Lorraine insisted on that. It was where we taught the children to swim, where we caught bluegills so small we threw them back and pretended not to mind, where we watched August storms flatten the water until it steamed. I thought the lake might be kinder to us than the dining room. I built a fire and hauled out the old canoe and fried too many onions, which made everyone feel like something good was about to happen, because a house full of onions is the smell of an attempt. I pictured us easing back toward each other like strangers who realize they share a common language. Then Mark arrived with a briefcase. "I do not want to do this here," June said. "It is only paper," Mark said, and when he said paper it sounded like weapon. He had drawn up a proposal. He would buy the company. He had financing, partners, terms. The board would be dissolved. The trust would be unwound. We would all be rich. He promised to keep the jobs, but with the way he said it, like a condition wrapped in a smile. June's contribution was a governance plan that gave her oversight of charitable commitments and a family foundation. They would set up an annuity for me, generous and clean, a pension bigger than any final bow deserved. "Dad, you can focus on your grandkids," Mark said, as if grandchildren were a hobby like stamps. I was tired. I was tired of being the wall they threw their ideas against. I was tired of being a man whose great love was gone. I was tired of feeling my life shrink to a set of counterarguments. But this was the moment to be the man Lorraine had married. I thanked them for the work they had done. I told Mark his proposal was clever but described a future that made my skin go cold. I told June her governance plan would be necessary if someone less invested in people ran the show. Then I told them something I had wrestled with since the night Lorraine died. "I am not scared of dying," I said. "I am scared of what will happen to this place when I am gone. Money is a force. It will pull you in directions you will call inevitable. You will explain those choices with words polished smooth by other people who made them before you. You will say it would be irresponsible not to do the deal. You will say the world changes, Dad, get with it. And you will be wrong. The world does change, but what it means to be a family does not. You stand with each other. You choose each other. You protect what the people you love built, even if it means less easy comfort." "So your answer is no," Mark said. "My answer is no," I said. He set a thin white envelope on the picnic table. "I figured as much," he said. It was an invoice. I thought it was a joke. It was itemized: strategic consulting, valuation studies, liaison work with potential acquirers, personal advisory time. The rate was staggering. The total at the bottom made my head go light. There was a discount line as if kindness were a coupon. "What is this?" I said, and the words fell like nails. "It is work," Mark said. "You asked me to bring my best thinking. I did. You benefit from it even if you refuse it. This is typical." June closed her eyes. "Mark," she said. "It is business," he said. "It is vile," she said. He shrugged. "Dad can afford it," he said, like he was choosing mercy. "Here is the thing that eats a man alive, I paid it. Not because I agreed. Not because I feared court. I paid it because the fight would have turned more of us into strangers. Because there was no way to win without making the children I loved into adversaries. I paid it because love and money rarely share a bed without one making the other look small. I paid it because paying felt like dignity." The news of the invoice ran through the family like an infection. The cousins whispered. The aunts called me to ask what exactly I was doing. My brother, Alan, who once borrowed $500 from me to fix a transmission and sent me a thank you note that I still keep, stopped by with a six-pack and the look of a man who is not sure how to talk to loss when it dresses like opportunity. We sat on the porch. We watched the sunset make monsters out of the trees. I told him the truth. I said my son had billed me for being his father. "You cannot be serious," he said. "I wish I were not." Alan rubbed his face. "What if you are wrong," he said, "not to be cruel, but because brothers have to ask?" "Then I will die wrong," I said. We got through that summer like a ship gets through a storm, not by steering hard toward the horizon, but by surviving the next wave. We held the quarterly family meetings. We did not agree. We avoided talking about the invoice. Mark pushed for another bite at the apple every few weeks. He insisted we retain an outside valuation firm. He had introduced the firm to the board. They had Christmas party ties to one of his partners. The board refused. Mark threatened to call a press conference. The board suggested he put his threats in writing so we could include them in the minutes. June drafted a compromise that read like it was written by someone who had never been hugged. The grandchildren grew taller while the adults shrank. When the school year started, things seemed to settle. I made a plan in the quiet that comes when leaves fall, holiday dinners, small gestures, kindness repeated until it wears down resentment like water smooths stone. I bought tickets to the Nutcracker for the grandchildren and put them in envelopes with their names on the front in Lorraine's handwriting, which I traced from old cards until my fingers cramped. I made cranberry relish and froze it. I hid gifts in the attic and promptly forgot where, which is a holiday tradition I can recommend. I told myself we had absorbed the worst and now it would get better as life's ordinary business replaced our combat. Then the summons arrived. They did not even wait until after Thanksgiving. It was a petition for a conservatorship. My children, my two children, asserted that I was not capable of managing my affairs. They wrote the words cleanly. They had medical letters from a doctor I had never met. They alleged paranoia, harmful rigidity, and depressive episodes that interfered with decision-making. They made my grief into a diagnosis. They made my love into a symptom. I sat at the kitchen table where Lorraine and I once planned vacations with a road atlas and a piece of string, and I read that filing 3 times. There was a moment in the second reading when I could feel my heart reorganizing into something unfamiliar, like a room after thieves have left. Then the anger came, not hot, not loud, not theatrical, but a colder thing, like the ocean at night. I called Mr. Shepherd. He sounded older than I had ever heard him. "We will fight it," he said. "I know," I said. "It will hurt," he said. "I know." The hearing was scheduled for December 20th, as if someone in the clerk's office believed in thematic coherence. The grandchildren had their school concerts and their class parties and the 4th grade bake sale where the winning brownies contained a secret caramel layer. I went to as many events as would let me in as an old man who cheered louder than the rest. My pocket was filled with peppermints. I watched my granddaughter Ella sing, "Silent Night," like she meant every note. I watched my grandson Tyler forget his dance steps and laugh and catch up again. Those children were wind in a stale room. At the hearing, the judge was brisk and practiced kindness like it was a form. Our lawyers argued that my decisions were painful to my children, which is not the same as dangerous to myself. Mark's team argued that my choices reflected a refusal to adapt to changing market conditions and that my insistence on a perpetual trust revealed a fixed illusion that community promises outranked family obligations. They called it a moral miscalibration in the vestigial organ of paternal responsibility, which is the sort of sentence you never forget even if you try to throw it away. June testified without looking at me. She said she wanted to protect me from exploitation, but what she did not say was that the person she thought might exploit me was me. They lost. The judge denied the petition. He added a paragraph that read like a benediction about the right of old men to be stubborn and of families to bear the weight of those stubbornnesses without calling them incompetent. When we walked into the hallway, Tyler ran past a security guard to hug my knees so hard I thought I might break. For an hour, my house filled with the sort of relief that tastes like laughter. People brought casseroles unasked. Alan tapped a spoon to a glass and made a toast that was 3 sentences long and better than any speech he had made at my wedding. Then my phone buzzed with a message from Mark. It was 1 sentence. "This is not over," he wrote. He was true to his word. Litigation continued in other forms. He sued the board for breach of fiduciary duty. He leaked a story to a business blogger that made me sound like a feudal lord desperate to freeze time. June withdrew a little more each week. She stopped coming to family meetings. She sent a note in January that said she could not see a path forward with a father who cared more about symbolism than his children's welfare. I called her and left a message 1 word long. "Please," I said. She did not call back. Grief comes in shapes. I have learned this. There is the grief that comes from the hole a person leaves. There is the grief that comes when what you believed about your life is taken from you. There is the grief that arrives like weather fronts, and the grief that calcifies like mineral deposits until the pipes in your house sing when you run the water. I carried them all. I worked. I went to the shop. I shook hands. I gave holiday bonuses. I listened to men whose knees hurt and whose wives were sick and whose sons were going through something, and I told them I understood, and I did. I can still tell the difference between oak and ash with my eyes closed. I can still cut a line straight enough to trust my thumb next to it. I can still hold a company steady while my life falls apart. There was one hopeful thing in that winter, and it kept arriving on my front porch with cheeks red from the cold. The grandchildren continued to come. Not always at once. Sometimes one at a time, as if they had made a schedule when their parents were not looking. Ella would visit with a book she pretended she needed help with. Tyler would sneak over after basketball practice with his shoes untied and his opinions loud. Little Nora, who is only 7 and soft in ways I recognize from Lorraine, would insist on helping me fold laundry, which she did poorly but with a devotion that made me want to hand her a kingdom. They did not ask me about lawsuits. They did not ask me about trusts. They asked me to show them how to make pancakes that do not stick, how to tie a fishing line knot that holds even when the fish is smarter than you, how to tell when a story is true. In teaching them, something reassembled inside me that I had believed was beyond repair. By spring, I believed maybe we had outlasted the worst. We had a rhythm. The courts moved slow. Mark called less. June sent a card for my birthday with a sentence that had the shape of a bridge. I thought, here it is, the thaw, and then the phone rang late one Saturday and told me everything I still had the capacity to lose. There had been a break-in at the shop. Not the showroom. The record room. Filing cabinets. Hard drives. An entire archive of photographs and contracts and financials I had kept in paper on purpose because I do not trust clouds you cannot see. Security footage showed two men in masks who moved like they knew the layout. They were in and out in 8 minutes. The alarm tripped. Police arrived after 10. The men were gone. I drove to the shop in my slippers. Even now I do not remember finding my keys or where I put them later. One of the men had knocked over a frame on the wall and cracked the glass. It was a photograph of Lorraine and me under the first sign we could afford to buy. The frame lay on the floor like a broken window, like proof that time moves one way. For a day, I told myself it could have been random. For a day, I let hope be stupid. Then the police called to tell me they had found my records in a storage unit 2 towns away rented by a limited liability company whose registered agent was a firm connected to one of Mark's partners. The unit had been paid 6 months in advance. The records had not been touched, not really. It looked like leverage. It looked like someone wanted to prove I was not the sole author of my past. I called Mark. I asked a question I should not have had to ask. He said he did not know anything about it. He said he would look into it. He said it like a man who knows how to end a call. So this is the second thing that eats a man, not betrayal, but the confirmation of the suspicion of betrayal. Proof is a silly thing in a family. You can gather all the right papers and it still does not change that it was your son who taught you to throw the football so it wobbled less. It does not change that your daughter used to line up her stuffed animals on the couch and host conferences for them. It does not change that you held their hands across streets, in grocery stores, in the empty between nightmares. But also it changes everything. I did the only thing that made sense in the logic of this new world. I cut the children out of the will. It was not vindictive. I do not have the energy for that anymore. It was clarity, finally. Mr. Shepard watched me sign the documents with a pen Lorraine gave me for our 35th anniversary. The ink flowed in a steady blue line. We created a scholarship in Lorraine's name for trade school students. We increased the employee profit sharing. We tightened the board's rules so no future man who loved too easily could undo what I had done. We created custodial accounts for the grandchildren fundable upon my death for education and first homes and first attempts at business as long as those attempts did not harm people on purpose. We spelled that out, because specificity is a kindness. I wanted to feel like a man who had taken his destiny into his own hands at last. I wanted to feel decisive, like a hammer. What I felt instead was like a man who had closed his own gates on a sunny day and then stood looking up at them from the inside, waiting for rain that would not come. I had kept everything financially. I had done the thing I thought would save us. And still, I had lost the thing I loved most. The atom of my family had split, and I was left with the energy released. I told the children what I had done in letters that took all my words to write. Mark sent nothing back. June sent an email that said, "You have punished us for grieving wrong." I wrote back, "I have punished no one. I have protected everyone you will never meet." She did not answer. For a week, I did not sleep. Every sound in the house announced itself like a question. The final conflict came not as a bang but as a brittle crack. It was early summer. Ella was graduating from middle school. The ceremony was outside. White folding chairs. Programs that pretended the weather cared. I sat between Alan and his wife, Grace, who wears hats to every event and looks like a painting I would like to carry around. When they called Ella's name, I stood and cheered. She looked for me and did the smallest wave, which is the wave you give to someone you love when you do not want to embarrass them but you do want them to know you looked. Afterward, the family gathered under a tent like we were trying to convince the sky of our intentions. There were photos. There were cupcakes with too much dye. There were balloons bumping against each other like they had opinions. Mark was there with his partner, Tom, who has never liked me because I do not treat him like a spreadsheet. June was there with her husband, Daniel, whose good heart has not saved him from being captured by the logic of the serious. The grandchildren buzzed like wasps, joyful and slightly sharp. I was showing Nora how to put a strawberry on a toothpick without stabbing herself when Mark stepped close with that look people wear when they are about to pull a pin. "You should not be here," he said. He kept his voice low, but the words carried. "It is my granddaughter's graduation," I said. "You will not stop," he said. "Stop what?" I said. "Making everything about your purity," he said. Alan stepped in. "This is not the time," he said. Mark ignored him. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a document in an envelope. I swear if he had produced a dove next, I would not have been surprised. There is a way to ruin a day with paper, and he has memorized it. "This is your final notice," he said. "We will be filing for a forced sale. We have found a way through the trust you should have anticipated. You are stubborn and you are wrong, and you have chosen strangers over your own blood. You have failed, Dad." Nothing in me responded for a long moment. The tent flapped. The sound of the wind through plastic is the loneliest sound there is. I thought of storms at the lake and the way Lorraine once pointed and said, "See how the lightning makes the water look like an eye opening." "Take your paper," I said. "Go." He held out the envelope anyway, like a priest offering a wafer. "Go," I said again, and I felt something in me fold up like a camp chair and be stored on a shelf in a garage no one visited anymore. He laughed, the small laugh a man makes when he believes finally he has outlasted the obstacle. He turned and handed the envelope to June, and this next part is the part that will make me laugh in another life. She would not take it. She would not take it, and in that space between his hand and hers is where I finally saw the true shape of my family. She looked at me, and then she looked at her brother, and for just a moment the love we all used to have for one another appeared like a figure seen through fog. Then it was gone again. "We are done," I said. "I want no more of this. People say you cannot end a family. They are wrong. Families end all the time. They end not with a single dramatic door slamming, but with 1,000 small administrative choices, with 1,000 signed checks, with the decision to hand a man at a picnic table a bill for loving his children incorrectly." I went home. I sat on the steps. I watched a dragonfly do what looked like math above the azaleas. I thought about calling Lorraine and then remembered I did not own a phone that reached where she is. I had destroyed my hope in my children by protecting them from the thing that had destroyed them. I had kept everything financially, but in the accounting that mattered, I was broke. That evening, a bike bell rang in the driveway. It was Tyler. He was sweating and proud. "Mom thinks I am at Ben's," he said. "I will be bad for 20 minutes. "You are a good boy, not a bad one," I said. He grinned. "That remains to be seen," he said. He is 14 and this is how he speaks, like a boy trying on certainty the way you try on a suit. "What happened today?" he asked, as if I were the one who needed explaining. "Your uncle has decided to fight me forever," I said. "That is stupid," he said. It is. You cannot fix stupid, he said, and I heard Mark in it, my own son's attitude passing through a child who deserved none of our wreckage, so I took it gently. You can be kind to it, I said. He sat on the steps. He made himself comfortable in a way only children and dogs dare. Nora arrived next. She had painted her fingernails the color of bubble gum. She held them up. Do you like them, she said, and I said I loved them, which was an understatement. An hour later, Ella came, walking, no bicycle, no excuse. She sat on the other side and leaned into me like I was a tree she had picked. We are making a plan, she said. We are going to move Sunday dinners to your house every other week, and no parents are allowed for 3 months. We will call Uncle Alan if we burn anything. We will bring our own dishes. I can make pasta. Tyler can make eggs. Nora can make a mess. We will take turns telling stories, and you will teach us how to do things the right way and the wrong way. Why the wrong way? I asked. Because sometimes that is faster to learn, she said. We are not giving up. We are the part of this family that is still good. We will stay good longer than they can stay mad. I did not cry. There is crying you do in the privacy of your own heart that never reaches your face, and that is what happened to me then. The neighborhood lights came on one by one, a slow constellation. In the silence that followed our plan, I felt hope like an ache. I felt Lorraine near enough to scold me for sitting on the steps too long. Our Sunday dinners began the next week. We burned the first batch of garlic bread and ate it anyway. Tyler told a story about how his history teacher gets so excited about the Battle of Hastings he sprays spit onto the front row. Nora showed us how she could recite the names of the Great Lakes forward and backward, which I once found impressive in June and now found like scripture. Ella described how she had told a friend a hard truth and the friend had not liked it and they were still friends anyway. I taught them how to smash roasted potatoes so the edges get crisp. I told them about the time Lorraine and I turned a ladder into a tree. We took turns saying what we were grateful for until it felt like prayer. The children brought things. Not things from the store. Things they had made. Ella sewed a crooked napkin. Tyler built a shelf for the hallway that leaned like a man on a Sunday afternoon because his measuring tape lies to him. Nora painted stones with our names, which I put in the garden so I could trip over our family and curse with delight. We built a new thing out of old things and made ourselves into something the law could not untie. Mark stopped calling. June sent a letter in September that said she had joined a committee to study nonprofit governance and thought of me when they discussed the dangers of paternalism. It read like a hand extended to a man drowning with the promise of a future lecture on water safety. I wrote back and said I loved her. I told her we were making Sunday dinner without her. I told her there would be a chair waiting if she ever wanted to sit. I did not mention Hope. Hope is shy. It does not like to be named. This is how it goes from here. I can see it. I will die and the company will be fine because that is what I built it to be. The money will go where I have sent it. The equation I have drawn from my life will add up in the way numbers do when you line them neatly with a ruler. My children will be angry in ways I cannot fix and then, I hope, tired in ways that make room for humility. The grandchildren will keep coming. They will keep growing. They will ask me how long to boil an egg, and I will tell them what Lorraine told me, which is to wait until the water is talking, then count like you are telling a story. Was there another path? Maybe. There is always another path we can imagine with perfect hindsight and unspent love. But here is what I know, and I know it with the same stubbornness that brought us our first contract and saved us from our first fire. the people we love are the shape we keep trying to return to. Money drags on that shape. It pulls and stretches and insists on its logic. We can refuse it. We can keep everything and lose everything. We can lose everything and keep what matters. The trick is deciding which loss you can live with. On the last Sunday in October, we grilled steaks in the yard and ate under the bare maple while Nora told a ghost story so intricate it required a chart. The evening was cold enough that our breath looked like we were doubting something. Ella wrapped herself in a blanket and asked me how I knew I had done the right thing. I do not, I said. I know only that I can look at myself and still know my name. Tyler said, "You are the person in our family who does not cheat." "On what?" I asked. "On promises," he said, and he said it like a boy reciting a rule that finally makes the game fun. I did not fix my children. I did not save my family. That sort of victory belongs to stories that end before the winter comes. What I did do was make room for a future where being a family means showing up when no one pays you to, where dinner is burned and still loved, where an old man can die knowing his grandchildren can boil an egg and frame a door and fail bravely and argue kindly and hand no one a bill for being loved. And if that is not the whole inheritance, it is enough to make the rest of my days feel like they belong to me.
Greetings, and thanks for spending your time with us today. I truly hope you enjoyed the video. I want to wish you a peaceful day or a restful evening, wherever you may be. Take care, and we'll see you next time.